Oh, God.
I'll just name it because it is a lot.
Okay, everybody, you know that there are different levels of organization in the human body. Smallest is the chemical. We have already talked about the chemical level. You remember we talked about atoms, right? Elements. We talked about the bonds, chemical reactions, organic, inorganic compounds. So those belong to chemical. Then we also talked about the cellular, cell structure of a cell, cell membrane, organelles, their functions, right? We talked about the intercellular junctions, integral peripheral proteins, right, in the cell membrane, their functions. We talked about the response of a living cell in different environment, in different types of solution. So we talked about the cellular level. One step higher is the tissue. You know, chemical, then cellular, then tissue, right? So today we will talk about the tissue. There are 4 different types of tissues in the human body: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscle tissue. So first, what is a tissue? Tissue is a collection of many similar cells. Very simple. Collection of many similar cells, or group of many similar cells. And the location of different types of tissues in the body. First, we'll see the location of the nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is present in the nervous system. Make sense? Nervous tissue is present in the nervous system. What are the parts of the nervous system? You already know: brain, spinal cord, and the nerves of the body, right? So those structures are formed by the nervous tissue. Then muscle tissue. There are 3 types of muscles present in the body: skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, cardiac muscle. Where they are located in your body? Skeletal muscles are attached to the skeleton. Make sense? Attached to the skeleton. Smooth muscle is present or found in the wall of tube-like structures in your body. Okay? So in the wall of tube-like structures, here you have smooth muscle. Can you name a couple of tube-like structures of your body?
Can you repeat your question?
What are the tube-like structures you have in your body?
Blood
Veins
vessels?
and arteries.
Very good. Anything else?
Intestines.
Intestines, small intestine, large intestine, esophagus, right? Pharynx, trachea, arteries, veins, right? Blood vessels, you said. So those are the tube-like structures. In the wall of tube-like structures, you have a smooth muscle. Make sense? Number one. Number two, in the wall of hollow organs. Those organs have cavity inside. So, in the wall of hollow organs, you have smooth muscle. What are the hollow organs in your body? Except heart, that is different. Stomach, very good. Good one, right? Very good. Cavity inside. How about the urinary bladder, right? Uterus, gallbladder. Make sense? Those are the hollow organs, and in the wall of those organs, you have what? Smooth muscle. Is it clear? Okay. So tube-like structures, hollow organs. Then the cardiac muscle is only present in the heart, wall of the heart. Makes sense? Highly specialized. Only in the heart. Okay. Then epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is present in the inner lining of tube-like and hollow organs. So you see now, this is a tube-like structure. Innermost layer, thin layer or lining, we say inner lining, is epithelial tissue. So number one, inner linings of tube-like structures of the body. Same tube-like structures, right? Intestine, esophagus, right? Pharynx, trachea, artery, vein. In all those organs, the inner lining or innermost layer of the wall is formed by epithelial tissue. So this is epithelial. Okay? Number one. Number two, inner lining of hollow organs. Here, in your stomach, urinary bladder, gallbladder, okay, heart, all organs have inner lining by epithelial. Okay, so wall is by smooth and inner layer is by epithelial tissue. So that is one. Lining. You can say inner lining. Now you know what is inner lining. Number one. Number two, surface. Skin is the surface of the body. So, skin has outer layer of the skin, that's the epidermis, is epithelial tissue. Okay? So, body surface. Number three, inside the glands. Okay, glands. So, those are the areas where you will find the epithelial tissue. Inner linings of tube-like structure, inner linings of hollow organs, body surface, which is the outer surface of the skin, and inside the glands. Connective tissue. Most widely distributed tissue in your body is connective tissue. Many different types of structures are formed by connective tissue. Bones are connective tissue, number one. Bones are connective tissue. Cartilages connective tissue. So this whole structure is formed by connective tissue. Make sense? Bones, cartilages, fats are connective tissue. Blood is a connective tissue. Tendons, ligaments. So all these belong to connective tissue. So very widely distributed tissue is the connective tissue, and they are different from each other very much. Bone is different than blood. Fat is different than bone, right? So, but all of them belong to connective tissue. Okay. So now you know the distribution of 4 different types of tissues in the body. Now we'll talk about the epithelial tissue in detail. We'll talk more about the epithelial tissue. First, classification. How we classify the epithelial tissue. We classify the epithelial tissue by looking at 2 things. Okay, 2 things. One is by location, and another way of classification is by looking at the shape and number of layers. Of the cells. So we look at the shape of the cells and number of the layer of the cells. First, by location, how we classify the epithelial tissue. By location, I have already mentioned to you where you will find the epithelial tissue. I just wrote a few minutes ago. Number 1, lining, inner lining, right? Remember? So lining and surface, skin, outer surface of the skin. So that is one, lining and surface, epithelium. Another is glands, called glandular. I also mentioned that, right? So inside the glands. So one type is lining and surface epithelium, and another type inside the glands, glandular epithelium. So those are by locations. By looking at the shape of the cells and number of layers, how we classify. I mentioned it in your lab, so you must remember. By looking at the shape of the cells. If you see the cells are tall, this is called what? Columnar. Very good. So this is columnar. Okay, columnar. Another type is cubical cells, cube shaped, and these are called what? Cuboidal, right? Cuboidal. Easy. Another type, the cells are what? Flat. Yeah, squamous, like scales on the fish. So, nucleus inside, nucleus. Flat cells. Squamous means the scale. So, squamous. Okay? And another type where the cells change their shape. Remember that? Transitional, right? Cells don't have fixed shape, so they can change their shape. So some are more cuboidal, some are columnar, okay, like different, you'll see different types of cells there, and that is called what? This is called what? Transitional. Very good. Okay. So, this is by looking the shape of the cells. Columnar, cuboidal, squamous, transitional. Now, by number of layers. If you see a single layer, that is called simple. Simple means single layer. So this is simple columnar, this is simple cuboidal, make sense? This is simple squamous. Transitional, we don't say simple or stratified. Okay. Now if you see more than one layer, that is called stratified. So this is now stratified columnar, make sense? So this is no more simple. Stratified. We clear? So it is simple. Now this is what? Stratified cuboidal. This is stratified squamous. Okay. So that's how we classify by shape and number of layers. There is another type I mentioned where a single layer of columnar cells, but the height of the cells is different, but it is a single layer. You see here, this one is columnar, this one is also columnar, right? But yeah, that is called pseudo-stratified, false multiple layer. It gives you the appearance of multiple layer, but actually it is what? One layer. Make sense? So, because of nuclei at different locations, if you see under the microscope, it will look like, multiple layers, but actually not. Okay. So this is pseudo-stratified columnar. Usually we see cilia on pseudo-stratified columnar cells. Okay. Make sense? So that's how we classify the epithelial tissue. Now, characteristics of epithelial tissue. How epithelial tissue is different than other tissues? Because epithelial tissue has some properties or characteristics. Number one, when you see the epithelial tissue, the cells, always you will see cells have a free end and an attached end. So under the cell you have connective tissue. This is connective tissue. Okay. So the cells have free upper end and attached lower end. Okay. This is called the apical end, upper end, apical end or surface which is free, and lower is basal surface or end. Okay. Every time you draw, you first draw a line. That means this is the connective tissue and these are the cells. Okay. So free or apical surface, attached or basal surface. Sometimes we see hair-like structures at the apical surface. What kind of structures? Hair-like structures, right? And if you see the hair are hard, staying like this, not moving, okay? It's like brush product. That is, those structures are called microvilli, okay? So these are what? Microvilli. If you see the hair are very soft, moving like this, beating like this, that is called what? Cilia. Make sense? So the difference, both are hair-like, but this is like harder, so will not move, and cilia will move. Is it clear? So that is another thing. Are composed of closely packed cells. Every time you see, I draw the epithelial tissue, I put the cells attached to each other, right? Side by side. Yeah, I don't draw like this is one cell, this is another cell, this is no. In connective tissue, you will see this, right? Different cells are away from each other. Make sense? But in case of epithelial tissue, you see every time their cells are attached to each other. Make sense? So closely packed. By what? You already know. Intercellular junctions. We talked about this in last class, right? tight junction, gap junction, desmosomes, remember that? So, intercellular junctions or joinings hold the cells together. So, that's why they are packed together. That is a property of epithelial tissue. Vascularity. A means absence. Vascular means blood vessels, right? Make sense? So, a vascular or avascularity means absence of blood vessels. Is it clear? That means what? Epithelial tissue doesn't have any blood vessels. Now the question is then how nutrition and oxygen are given, right? Because these cells are alive, right? They need nutrition and oxygen. So what happens, although there is no blood vessel in the epithelial tissue, under the epithelial tissue you always have what? Connective tissue. Remember that? Connective tissue. So this is connective tissue and blood vessels are there. So what happens? By diffusion, nutrition and oxygen go to the epithelial tissue, although it doesn't have blood vessels. From underlying connective tissue, by diffusion, nutrition and oxygen go there. Is it clear? Okay. There's no diffusion, right? Okay. Movement of chemicals from high to low concentration. Okay. High rate of regeneration. This is another very important property of epithelial tissue. Let me give you an example. I told you your skin surface is epithelial tissue, right? Surface epithelium, remember that? And you all know that when skin gets very dry, what happens? Cells die, right? Tissue die. You can peel the skin, but quickly new skin is formed. You all know that, right? New tissue is formed. So epithelial cells or tissue can quickly regenerate, reproduced. Okay? Another example, when you drink something very hot like coffee, if it is very hot, you will feel that the inside the mouth, right, the taste is gone. If you eat something, you don't taste it, right? You feel that. Why? Because cells are dying. If you drink something hot, cells inside the mouth, epithelial lining cells die. But after a few hours, it comes back, right? So, regeneration. The cells can quickly be reproduced to replace the dead cells. So, that is another important property of the epithelial tissue. Is it clear? So, number one, the apical or free and basal ends, and cells are tightly attached to each other by intercellular junctions or joinings. Sometimes we see hair-like structures, cilia or microvilli, and don't have blood vessels, but from underlying connective tissue, by diffusion, it gets nutrition and oxygen, and high rate of regeneration. I have already shown this one, simple and stratified, single layer, multiple layer, different types of shapes, different shapes, you already know. Now, in next few slides, what I'll do, I'll go over different types of epithelial tissue under the microscope. That means how they look like under the microscope. You have already seen this, right? You have in the lab part, you have seen these pictures under the microscope. You have seen this. Two things are important. One is how they look like. Number two, how they look like is important for your lab part, right? If I ask you what type of tissue is this, what type of tissue, so that is important particularly for the lab part. But the locations, I'll mention 2 or 3 locations for each type. You have to underline or highlight. Those you have to remember, okay? Not all the locations, I'll mention important locations, okay? So you need to remember those for the lecture exam. Okay, so first, simple squamous. Why this is called simple squamous? You see in this picture, alveoli. You know, inside the lung you have alveoli, right? 3 alveoli here. In the wall of the alveoli, you have a single layer of flat cells, like this. So this is one flat cell, nucleus here. This is another flat cell, nucleus here, another one. So a single layer of flat cells in the wall of the alveoli. That's why it is called simple squamous. Is it clear? Simple squamous. Now the locations. I have mentioned one, alveoli or air sacs. Same thing. Air sacs or alveoli. The wall is simple squamous. Number 2, inner lining of the tube-like structures. That means inner lining of the blood vessels. Here, this is an artery or vein, inner lining. So write down or underline inner lining of the blood vessels. Number 2. Okay. Number 3, inner lining of the heart. So this is the heart. Innermost lining is simple squamous. So 3 structures, I am repeating again. Wall of the alveoli or air sacs, inner lining of the blood vessels, number 2. Number 3, inner lining of what? The heart. Is it clear? Make sense? Okay. So 3 areas have simple squamous. Simple cuboidal. Here you see the cross section of many tube-like structures like this. This is one tube-like structure, another tube-like structure. So in this picture you see cross section of many tube-like structures, and in the wall of these tube-like structures you have cuboidal. So basically this is a cuboidal cell here, this is another cuboidal cell, this is another cuboidal, okay, like this, nucleus. So a single layer of cuboidal cells. That's why it is called simple cuboidal. Make sense? The problem is sometimes under the microscope you won't see the cell membrane. That makes it difficult, right? That makes it difficult to. But if you can find 1 or 2 cells, let me find one for you. Here, you can see this one, clear boundary. This one has clear boundary, okay? So other cells are like that. Where you will find kidney tubules. Kidney tubules, number 1. Kidney tubules are also called nephrons. Okay, kidney tubules or nephrons, same thing. Ducts of the glands. Inside the gland, you have ducts, tube-like structures. So ducts of the glands. So now you see both are tube-like structures, kidney tubules or nephrons and ducts of the glands. And in the wall, you have simple cuboidal. Simple columnar. Okay. Simple columnar is a single layer of columnar cells. Location. Your gastrointestinal tract. But there is a but. Which part of gastrointestinal tract or GI tract? Stomach and below. Not above the stomach. Stomach and below. Make sense? Inner lining of stomach and below has simple columnar. Okay. Now you tell me. Your stomach is here, right? Stomach, and below you have which structures in GI tract? intestines, right? Small intestine and large intestine, right? So stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Innermost layer or lining is what? Simple columnar. Make sense? But if you go above the stomach, you have esophagus, right? You have pharynx, you have mouth. Those have different type of epithelial lining. Okay? So that's why I said stomach and below. Another structure is gallbladder, inner lining of gallbladder, simple columnar. Go to the next one, pseudostratified columnar. You must remember this. It has cilia. Now, where we find pseudostratified columnar, also called pseudostratified ciliated columnar, because it has cilia. Upper respiratory tract, upper part of your respiratory system. That means inside the nose, inside the trachea, inside the nose, inside the trachea. Now you tell me, why in those structures you need ciliated columnar? Because you know that secretion occurs, right? Mucus secretion occurs inside the nose, is the upper part of respiratory tract, right? So the surface is sticky, right? And you are breathing 24 hours. Dust particles are getting in, right? And getting attached to the mucus, sticky surface, right? So that surface must be broomed, cleaned, right? So to push the mucus away, you need what? Cilia. Make sense? There are millions of cilia, right? They are working together. That is creating a lot of force, right? Although they are very small, but millions of them are working at the same time, right? So that is enough to push the mucus, dirty mucus, downwards, away. So that's why those structures have cilia. Upper respiratory tract. Stratified squamous. In a stratified squamous, you have many layers of flat cells. So you can see here many layers of flat cells. And stratified squamous is found in two areas: dry surface and wet surface. The dry surface, skin is the dry surface of the body. You have one type of stratified squamous that is called keratinized, K-E-R-A-T-I, keratinized stratified squamous. In wet surface, example, esophagus, okay, mouth, inside the mouth, inner lining of vagina. So those structures have another type of stratified squamous that is called non-keratinized. Okay, non-keratinized stratified squamous. So stratified squamous could be keratinized or non-keratinized. Keratinized in dry surface, example, in the skin. Non-keratinized in wet surfaces, inner surface of the esophagus, mouth, vagina. Where in one sentence, if I want to say, just remember, stratified squamous forms thick layer because multiple layer. That's why the areas where the chance of friction is high. The areas where what? Chance of friction is high. you will find stratified squamous because it forms thick layer, okay, for protection. You know that chance of friction is high in the skin, right? Body surface. Chance of friction is high inside the mouth, right? Because when you chew the food, right? Lot of friction. Esophagus, narrow tube, so food bolus passes through it. So the chance of friction is high. Make sense? So that is stratified squamous. Transitional. Transitional epithelium has two important properties. One is they can change the shape. The cells can change what?
Shape.
The shape. I have mentioned that before. So, by changing the shape, they can absorb pressure. For example, this is an organ. Look at me. This is an organ. Inner surface is transitional. So this organ expands. Okay. So when this organ expands, the cells will get what? Flat because of pressure. Make sense? More pressure on the wall, right? So cells will get flat. When the organ is empty, gets smaller, and cells become more columnar.
Like the lungs.
Only organ, there is another property, that's why I said how many properties? Two, right? One is they can get stretched, right? To absorb what? Pressure. Is it clear? Number two is transitional, doesn't allow any fluid pass through it. Does not allow what? Fluid pass through it. Now you tell me, where fluid should not pass through? Urinary bladder, ureter, where the urine is present, right? Because urine should stay inside the bladder. So this is the urinary bladder. Here you have the transitional epithelial lining. Here you have urine. Okay? So urine should not get back into the body. Make sense? Urine should stay there inside the bladder. Right? So that's why transitional is in the urinary bladder. So urine cannot get out. Ureter, you know the tubes bring the urine from the kidney to the bladder. You remember? So urine is also here all the time. So lining is what? Transitional. Makes sense, right? So where urine is present, transitional. Okay? Because it does not let the urine or fluid pass through. And you know the bladder gets big, right? Small. So you can change the shape and absorb that pressure. Okay. So those are the main types of epithelial tissue. Two other types, stratified tubular, stratified columnar, they have limited distribution in the body. So just remember one from here. Stratified tubular is present in mammary gland, that means female breast. Okay? Mammary gland has stratified tubular. Okay? These two have limited only in couple of places. Okay. So that's all about the epithelial tissue. Okay? So let me quickly review, then go to next one. So we talked about what? What is a tissue? Collection of many similar cells. Okay? Because if you take some cardiac cell and some, skeletal muscles and put them together, that will not make the tissue. Okay? Similar cells, number one. So how many types of tissues we have? 4, right? Epithelial, connective, nervous, and muscle tissue, muscular tissue. And then I have talked about the location of those tissues, right? Then the properties of epithelial tissue, right? Then I have talked about the classification. 2 ways, right? We do by location, by looking at the shape and number of layers, right? By location, we divide into 2: lining and surface, one, and glandular sediments, right? So those 2 are by location. And by looking at the shape, right? And number of layers, simple study. That's all. Then I talked about how they look under microscope, right? And just a couple of locations where you will find each type. Make sense? So basically, those are the things we talked. Now, most widely distributed tissue or common tissue is the connective tissue. And you must remember, I said bones, cartilages, all these fats, blood, tendons, ligaments, all belong to connective tissue. Why? Because they come from a single tissue, embryonic tissue, that is called mesenchyme, which is an embryonic tissue. Okay? So, all types of connective tissues come from there. Bones, cartilages, blood, tendons, ligaments, fats, all come from single source. That's why all these belong to connective tissue. Okay? Connective tissue has three important components. If you see the connective tissue, most of the cases you will see the cells are not attached to each other. In epithelial, I mentioned, they are attached to each other by junctions. But in case of connective, in most of the cases, you will see the cells are here and there. So these are the cells. In between the cells, the space is filled by two things: fibers. So these are fibers. There are different types of fibers. You already know collagen fibers, elastic fibers, reticular fibers, right? You already know that. And chemicals, that is called ground substances. Okay? So cells and fibers and ground substances of chemicals. Those are the components of connective tissue. Now these two things together, fibers and ground substances together, is called matrix. Matrix. Okay? So cells and matrix. Matrix contains fibers and ground substances or chemicals. Okay? Functions. Since bones and cartilages belong to connective tissue, the main function of the bones and connective tissue is cartilages. You see here, cartilages here doing what? Connecting these bones to this bone, right? These cartilages are connecting these ribs to the sternum, right? Here you see another piece of cartilage connecting these two bones, right? So connection is one function. Another is protection. You know that your most important organ is the brain, right? Is protected by the bones. Bones are what? Connective tissue. The ribs, cartilages are connective tissue, right? Your heart and other important organs are being protected here, right? So protection is another function. Support. We all know that this structure is supporting the body, right? Whole body. And this structure is connective tissue. Bones and cartilages, right? So support. Flexibility. You know, one type of cartilage is called elastic cartilage. Remember that? Elastic cartilage. So in some structures you have elasticity. For example, your ear, right? It has elasticity. What is elasticity? You can change the shape, but if you remove the pressure, it will go back to its actual shape, right? That is elasticity. So your ear, right? Epiglottis, both start with E, have elastic cartilage. So give elasticity. Transport. Which type of connective tissue helps in transport the most? The blood. You know that, right? blood transports different chemicals. Right? So those are few very important functions of connective tissue. There are many more. Now, fibers. We know that there are different types of cells, fibers, ground substances. Fibers. 3 types of fibers are found in connective tissue. What are those? Elastic fibers, collagen fibers, reticular fibers. You have seen all these fibers under the microscope, okay?